The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that made even the strongest streetlights shiver. A slow drizzle covered the long, empty industrial road, turning every surface wet and slippery. The rain wasn't heavy, but it had been falling for hours, making the air feel heavy and the ground muddy. Most people had already gone home. Only the distant hum of machinery, the occasional passing truck, and the steady tapping of raindrops filled the silence. Out of this quiet, darkness moved a creature that didn't belong to this world. It walked slowly, almost dragging its feet, as if every step required effort. Its body was large, yet thin from exhaustion. Its scales, which must have once shined brightly, were now dull under the dim lights. The creature looked like a dragon from an old storybook, but not the scary kind. Its wings were folded tight against its body, wet from the endless rain. What made it even more unusual were its eyes. They were pale, cloudy, and unfocused. Anyone watching would understand instantly that the creature was blind. Despite the cold, the creature kept moving. It wasn't walking with confidence or purpose. Instead, it was following tiny clues, the soft vibrations on the ground, the sounds of dripping water, the faraway engines. It listened carefully to everything, turning its head slightly each time a new noise appeared. That was the only way it could figure out where it was. The rainwater ran down its face, but it didn't react. Maybe it didn't have the strength to care anymore. The creature must have been wandering for a long time. Its legs trembled now and then, like they wanted to give up. Several times it stopped, lifted its head, and tried to listen for something familiar, maybe a voice, maybe a sound from its home, maybe anything that could guide it. But there was nothing. Only emptiness. Only the rhythmic tap of rain on metal and concrete dot when cars passed. Their lights flashed across its wet scales, creating a brief sparkle. But the creature didn't see the light. It only heard the growls of engines and the hiss of tires cutting through water. Sometimes drivers honked when they spotted its shadow crossing the road. Some slowed down, confused. Others sped up, unsure if the figure ahead was an animal, a pile of junk, or something else entirely. One car splashed a wave of cold water onto the creature as it passed, making the dragon flinch and step back. But still no one stopped. No one bothered to look closer. A small factory sat further down the road, and a few workers inside talked quietly about strange shapes they thought they saw outside. One of them said he glimpsed something big moving behind the fence earlier. Another said he heard something that didn't sound like a dog or a stray animal. But none of them went outside to check. People usually ignored strange things on nights like these. Everyone just wanted to go home to warmth and light. The blind dragon, however, didn't have a home to return to. Not anymore. It depended only on its senses, and even those were fading from tiredness. Several times its claws slipped on the wet surface. When it stumbled, it quickly pulled itself together, refusing to fall. It had the instinct to survive, even if it didn't know where it was heading. After a while, the creature reached an area where the road widened. There were warehouses on one side and a long metal fence on the other. The ground here was uneven. Rainwater had collected in shallow puddles. The creature stepped carefully, but even so, it splashed into a deeper puddle it didn't sense. Cold water soaked its legs, but it simply continued walking, listening for anything that would help. A gust of wind blew hard, carrying the smell of oil, rust, and damp earth. The creature lifted its head again. For a brief moment, it stood completely still. It listened to the far-off sounds of metal clanging. It listened to the rolling thunder somewhere behind the clouds. It listened to the buzzing street lamp above it. And in all these sounds, it felt even more alone. The rain made little rivers along the road, and each river tapped against the creature's claws as it walked. The sound echoed softly beneath its body. Even though it was blind, This echo told it whether the path was narrow or wide, close or open. But tonight, the echoes felt confusing. The world around it sounded too big, too empty. It didn't know where to go. At one point, it paused beside an old signpost. The metal pole was rusted, but still strong. The dragon lowered its head and gently pressed it against the post. It let the vibrations travel through its forehead. That told it the pole was solid and unmoving. It used these little moments to understand its surroundings, to anchor itself so it didn't lose direction entirely. But the night was unforgiving. The rain grew colder. The road was slippery, and the creature's steps became heavier. A soft, weak sound escaped its throat, not a roar or a cry, something tired and fragile, almost like a whimper. The kind of sound you would never expect from a creature that looked so powerful. But this dragon was not strong tonight. It was scared, hungry, wet, and lost in a world it couldn't see. It reached the center of the road again. The faint yellow glow of a distant streetlight made its form look even more unusual to anyone watching. It stood with its head lowered, breathing slowly. Steam rose from its breath, mixing with the cold air. The creature moved 1 foot forward, then stopped again, as if unsure whether it was safe. A heavy truck approached in the distance. The vibration spread through the ground long before the creature heard the engine. It turned its head toward the noise. The truck driver, seeing something large on the road, panicked and hit the horn. The loud blast echoed through the area. The dragon flinched violently, its wings curling tighter against its body. It tried to move aside, but its foot slipped on the wet ground. Luckily, the driver swerved and passed without hitting it, though the wind from the truck pushed the creature slightly off balance. After the truck disappeared into the night, the dragon remained still for a long moment. Breathing as if recovering from a shock. It slowly moved toward the side of the road again, trying to find shelter. But there was nothing, not even a tree. Only metal buildings, fences, and locked gates. The creature pressed itself against the wall of a warehouse, feeling the cold surface. It curled its wings inward, trying to trap some warmth, but the rain had already soaked through everything. A smaller sound came from the dragon now. A tired exhale. A soft shake of its head. It looked somewhat like a lost child wandering in the storm, unable to find where it belonged. Its blindness made everything harder. Every noise could be danger. Every vibration could be a car. Every unfamiliar echo could be a trap. Yet still, it kept moving. Even when its legs trembled. Even when the world felt too big and too unknown. The night felt endless for the creature. It didn't know how far it had walked, or how long it had been out there. It just knew it couldn't stop. If it stopped, it felt like it might never get up again. Somewhere in the distance, a door opened. A small beam of warm light spilled onto the road. The creature turned its head, sensing the faint sound. But the door closed again, and the light disappeared instantly. Whoever opened it had no idea there was something wandering so close. The rain eased a little, falling softer now, almost like mist. But the cold remained sharp. The dragon kept moving, step by careful step, guided only by sound and instinct. It didn't know that someone would see it soon. It didn't know help was close. All it knew was the lonely road, the cold rain, and the darkness that had become its entire world. And still, it kept going. The night grew even colder as the rain continued to fall. Most of the factories along the road had already shut down for the day. Only a few late workers stayed inside one of the workshops tucked between two large metal buildings. A soft orange light glowed from the workshop windows, making the rain look golden as it fell in front of the glass dot inside. A foreman was finishing his last task before heading home. He had stayed longer than usual because one of the machines needed urgent repair. He wiped his hands on a cloth, checked the switchboard one more time, and sighed with relief when everything finally worked. It had been a long day, the kind that made a person dream of warm food and a dry bed. As he walked toward the exit, he listened to the rain hitting the roof. It reminded him how cold it would be outside. Still, he didn't mind. He preferred facing the rain over working overtime in the noisy workshop. He grabbed his old jacket from a hook, slipped it on, and pulled the hood over his head. The jacket had seen many winters, and the fabric had softened over years of hard work. When he opened the workshop door, a thin gust of wind pushed the rain sideways. He stepped out, locked the door behind him, and began walking toward the outer gate. Each step splashed in the little puddles that covered the ground. The lights of the workshop flickered for a second before stabilizing, casting long shadows across the empty lot. He paused for a moment, just listening. The area was usually quiet at night, but something felt different. Not dangerous, just unusual. The faint sound of dripping water echoed from somewhere behind the fence. Farther away, he could hear the hum of a generator that someone had forgotten to turn off. He shrugged and kept walking. Nights like this always made sounds feel bigger than they were. As he reached the gate, a strange noise drifted toward him through the rain. At first, he thought it was a stray dog whining, but the sound was softer, deeper, and carried a tired tone he hadn't heard before. It didn't sound like an animal complaining. It sounded like something exhausted, something that had been alone for too long. He froze in place and listened harder. The sound came again, carried by the wind weak, unsure, almost like a soft cry. He felt a quick chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Someone or something was out there. Curiosity tugged at him, even though he was tired and ready to go home. He switched on the small flashlight he carried in his pocket, the same one he used when inspecting machines. The beam wasn't strong, but it worked well enough for dark corners and night shifts. He pushed open the metal gate and stepped onto the empty road. The rain was gentler now, but still steady. He looked around, moving the flashlight left and right. The road stretched far into the distance, glistening under the dull streetlights. Nothing seemed out of place at first. But then the sound came again. This time clearer. It came from the left side of the road. He turned and lifted the flashlight. The beam floated across wet gravel, puddles, and the old metal fence. It took a moment, but then the light landed on something large standing in the road. He squinted, unsure of what he was seeing. The figure looked like a big animal, but not one he recognized. It stood still, facing slightly away from him, as if listening to the world more than watching it. The creature's back rose and fell slowly with each breath. Its wings, yes, they looked like wings, were pressed flat against its body. He took a careful step closer, sweeping the beam of light slowly across the creature's form. The light revealed more details: the long neck, the curved tail, the scales reflecting tiny droplets of rain. His heart thumped once hard. It looked like a dragon, but not the fire-breathing monster from fairy tales. This creature looked weak and drenched, almost trembling from the cold. But what caught his attention the most were the creature's eyes. When the light reached them, the dragon turned its head slightly in his direction, but its eyes didn't react. They were pale, cloudy, and unfocused. He realized it wasn't just ignoring the light. It couldn't see it. The creature was blind. A wave of sympathy hit him so quickly he didn't even think twice. Instead of fear, he felt concern. Whatever this creature was, it didn't seem dangerous. It looked lost, confused, and very tired. The foreman lowered his flashlight, not wanting to scare it. He took another slow step. The rain made a soft tapping noise on his hood. The creature lifted its head at the sound of his movement. It didn't growl. It didn't hiss. It only turned its head as if trying to identify him. He spoke gently, keeping his voice calm and steady. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you." His voice sounded strange in the quiet night, but it carried warmth. The creature's ears twitched at the sound. It shifted its feet, but didn't move away. He knew animals reacted to tone more than words. So he kept his tone soft, almost like he was talking to a frightened pet. He stepped closer again, the flashlight pointing down now so the light wouldn't bother the creature. When he reached a safe distance, he stopped and took a deep breath. He could see the dragon more clearly now. The creature's posture looked tense, as if expecting something bad to happen. Its wings were trembling slightly. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You're okay." The creature tilted its head toward his voice. It took a slow breath, then lowered itself just a little, as if trying to look smaller or less threatening. The foreman noticed scratches on its legs, not from fighting, but from walking blindly for too long. He also saw how thin it looked, as though it hadn't eaten in days. His concern grew stronger. No living being deserved to be out in this cold, especially not one that couldn't even see where it was going. He looked around. Cars were rare at this hour, but one could appear any minute. The creature standing in the middle of the road could be hit easily. "You shouldn't be standing here," he murmured. He moved a little closer and extended his hand, but stopped when he realized the creature couldn't see the gesture. So instead, he spoke again. "I'm coming near you. Don't be afraid." Slowly, he reached out and let his hand touch the edge of the creature's damp wing. It flinched slightly, but only from surprise. Once it realized the touch wasn't painful, the creature relaxed a little. The scales felt cooler than he expected, cold, wet, and smoother than any animal he had ever touched. "You've been out here a long time, haven't you?" He whispered. The creature lowered its head, almost as if it understood his voice. The foreman gently guided it away from the center of the road, one slow step at a time. The dragon followed the sound of his footsteps, trusting him more with each movement. He led it to the side of the road, under a metal overhang, where the rain didn't hit as hard. The creature settled there, curling its tail around itself. It lowered its wings slightly, no longer as tense. The foreman crouched beside it. He didn't know what kind of being this was or where it came from, but he knew one thing. It needed help, and for some reason it had chosen to trust him. Looking at the creature sitting there in the soft rain, he felt a strange responsibility, like fate had placed this moment in front of him. He didn't know what he would do next, but he knew he couldn't walk away. The lonely, blind creature had found the only human willing to stop, and for the first time that night, the rain felt a little less cold. The creature sat under the metal overhang, its large body curled tightly, as if trying to make itself smaller. The rain was lighter here, but cold drops still blew in from the side whenever the wind shifted. The foreman stood beside it, letting his flashlight hang loosely in his hand. He didn't want to shine it directly at the creature anymore. He didn't want to do anything that might frighten it. For a moment, both of them were quiet. The only sound came from the rain tapping against the roof above them and the small rivers of water running across the ground. The foreman's heart still beat a little fast from what he had witnessed, but he forced himself to stay calm. He felt that the creature could sense his emotions, and he didn't want to make it nervous. He took a slow breath and crouched down again, so he wouldn't look too tall or threatening. The creature reacted to the sound of movement, gently lifting its head. Although its eyes couldn't see him, its ears were sharp. It followed every small noise he made. "You're all right now," he said softly, almost in a whisper. The creature let out a quiet, tired exhale. It wasn't exactly a sigh, but something close. A sound that told him how exhausted it truly was. He noticed its shoulders rising and falling heavily, as if each breath took energy it barely had. He reached out a hand again, moving slowly so the creature could hear the motion. When his fingers touched its scales, the creature didn't flinch this time. Instead, It allowed the contact. The scales were slightly warmer now compared to earlier, but they still carried the chill from wandering in the rain for so long. "You must be freezing," he murmured. "And hungry, too." The foreman thought for a moment. He wasn't an animal expert. He wasn't even sure what this creature truly was. But he knew hunger. He knew tiredness. He knew what it felt like to be alone on a cold night with no idea where help would come from. And because he understood those feelings, he felt a deep urge to do anything to help this creature. He stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements, and walked toward the small storage shed near the workshop gate. The creature immediately lifted its head at the sound of his footsteps moving away. It made a soft noise, a small worried rumble in its throat, almost like it didn't want him to leave. "I'm just getting something," he called gently. "I'm still here." The creature lowered its head again, reassured by his voice. Inside the shed, the foreman rummaged through old supplies. He knew he had some containers of water stored for emergencies and a few leftover food items from the shift. He grabbed a large plastic jug filled with clean water and a small box of soft bread rolls that the workers sometimes ate during breaks. It wasn't perfect. He had no idea what the dragon ate, but at least it was better than giving it nothing. He returned to the creature, the water jug tapping lightly against his leg with each step. The creature turned its head toward the sound right away. It must have recognized his footsteps by now. "I brought you something," he said as he knelt down beside it again. He unscrewed the cap of the jug, letting the creature hear the sound so it wouldn't be startled. He placed the jug near its feet and guided its head gently with his hand. Surprisingly, the creature seemed to understand. It lowered its mouth close to the jug and sniffed it first. Then, with slow and careful movements, it began to drink. The water disappeared quickly, as if the creature hadn't tasted anything fresh in a long time. "Good," the foreman whispered, relieved. "You needed that." When the creature finished drinking, it let out a soft, grateful rumble, low, warm, and almost musical. The sound gave the foreman a strange sense of comfort. It felt like the creature was thanking him. He then took one of the soft bread rolls and broke it into smaller pieces. He wasn't sure if the creature could even eat human food, but he held out a small piece anyway. The creature sniffed it cautiously and gently took it from his hand. It chewed slowly, as if its mouth wasn't used to something so soft. He gave it another piece, and then another. The creature ate them with patience, not rushing, not grabbing. There was a gentleness to it that didn't match its large size. It almost felt like feeding a lost pet that didn't want to appear rude. "You're not scary at all, are you?" he said quietly, watching it chew the last piece. The creature lifted its head slightly, tilting it to the sound of his voice. It seemed calmer now, more peaceful. The trembling in its wings had eased a little. Still, the foreman could see signs of strain all over its body. Tiny cuts, worn-down scales, and tired muscles told a long story of wandering without direction. And the blindness, that explained so much. The creature must have been relying only on sounds and vibrations to survive. No wonder it walked so slowly and hesitantly. He looked at its cloudy eyes for a moment. It was heartbreaking. He couldn't imagine how frightening the world would feel without sight, especially for a creature so big, so out of place in this human environment. "You must have gone through a lot," he whispered. The creature shifted closer, lowering its head until it rested lightly near his knee. The movement felt deliberate, like a gesture of trust. The foreman froze for a moment, surprised, but then slowly placed his hand on its head. The creature didn't pull away. It relaxed even more, as if it finally felt safe. A soft wind blew through the area, making the rain murmur against the roof above. The foreman felt a drop slide down the back of his neck, but he ignored it. He was focused only on the creature now. He stayed there for several minutes, just sitting beside it, letting it rest. It felt strange how natural the moment was, like he had known the creature longer than just a few minutes. The fear that most people would have felt simply didn't exist in him. Instead, he felt responsibility. A heavy yet meaningful responsibility. But he knew he couldn't just leave the creature here. It needed more than food and water. It needed shelter, safety, care, and he wasn't sure he could provide all that by himself. Still, he couldn't rush. He didn't want the creature to panic. He needed to build trust first. So he spoke again, this time in a softer tone. "Can you stand up?" he asked gently. "I want to take you somewhere better." The creature lifted its head slightly, listening to his voice. It shifted its legs slowly, as though preparing to move. But it didn't stand. Instead, it made a small sound, a tired, hesitant hum that almost felt like it was asking for reassurance. "It's okay," he said, touching its shoulder gently. "I'll go with you." For a moment, it stayed still. Then, with effort, it finally pushed itself up. Its movements were slow, shaky, but determined. The foreman stayed close, one hand near its wing, ready to help if needed. When it stood fully, the creature lowered its head toward him again, waiting for direction. It wasn't just following sound anymore, it was choosing to follow him. "That's it," he encouraged. "Just stay close." He walked slowly, making sure his footsteps were clear and steady. The creature matched his pace, following every step like a shadow. Its claws tapped softly against the ground, but even that sound was gentle now. He led it behind the workshop, toward an area where old shipping crates created a natural shelter. It wasn't perfect, but it would protect the creature from the wind and rain. The space was large enough for the creature to lie comfortably. When they reached the spot, the creature sniffed around, learning the space through sound and touch. Finally, it settled down again, curling its tail around its body. The foreman sat beside it once more, watching as the creature slowly relaxed. The long night had been harsh and confusing for the blind dragon. But now, under the dim protection of the crates, and beside the calm presence of the foreman, it finally felt a small sense of safety. And for the first time, the creature didn't feel alone in the darkness. The creature rested under the shelter of the shipping crates, its large body curled in a way that made it look smaller than it really was. The rain outside had not stopped completely, but it had softened into a thin mist that drifted through the gaps between the crates. The foreman sat beside the creature, leaning against one of the wooden walls. He wasn't in a hurry to go home anymore. Something about leaving the creature alone felt wrong. It felt as if the night itself would swallow it the moment he left. The creature's breathing grew slower and more steady. The earlier trembling in its wings had finally stopped. It must have been feeling the warmth from the foreman's presence. Or maybe it was just grateful to have found a place that didn't feel threatening. Either way, the tiredness in its body was clear. It had likely been walking for hours, maybe longer. Without rest or direction. The foreman watched the creature's chest rise and fall, the rhythmic motion strangely calming. He could almost feel the exhaustion coming off the creature. He wondered what kind of life it had before ending up on this lonely road. Had it lived somewhere far away? Did it have a home? A family? Did someone once take care of it? Or had it been wandering alone long before he found it? He didn't know the answers, but he didn't need them right now. What mattered most was that the creature was no longer out in the storm, lost and blind. A soft sound escaped the creature's throat, something like a gentle hum. The foreman wasn't sure what it meant, but it didn't sound distressed. It sounded more like a sigh, a peaceful one. The creature shifted, its head brushing lightly against the crate beside it. He reached out and placed his hand on its shoulder again, stroking it slowly. The scales were still slightly cold, but not as icy as before. "You're safe here," he murmured. "Just rest." The creature lowered its head closer to the ground, as if accepting the comfort in his voice. It felt strange, almost unreal, to talk to something so large and otherworldly in such a gentle way. But the foreman wasn't thinking about how strange it looked. His thoughts were simple. He saw a living being that needed help, a being that had trusted him in the middle of a cold, dark night. After a while, the creature's eyes closed. The cloudy color of its pupils made it hard to tell, but the soft lowering of its eyelids was enough. It had fallen asleep. The foreman felt relieved. Sleep meant safety. Sleep meant strength returning. Sleep meant the creature wasn't scared anymore. But the foreman knew that sleeping outside like this couldn't be a long-term solution. The creature needed real shelter. A dry, warm space, food, water, care. He couldn't just leave it here after sunrise. He needed a plan. He looked around the area, listening to the sound of distant machines and the soft whisper of wind moving through the empty lot. His mind began to search for answers. There was an old storage room behind the workshop that wasn't used anymore. It was bigger than the crates and had a proper roof. It might work as a temporary shelter. But could he lead the creature there safely? And what would the other workers think if they saw it? He sighed quietly. There were too many questions and not enough time. But he knew one thing: he wasn't going to abandon this creature, not after everything it had gone through. If he didn't help it, no one else would. The creature stirred slightly in its sleep, like it sensed his worry. He touched its shoulder again, gently, to reassure it even as it slept. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll figure something out." He didn't know why he kept talking to it. Maybe because he felt responsible. Maybe because he knew. The creature could hear the emotion in his voice, even if it didn't understand the words. Time passed slowly. The rain finally faded to nothing more than a light drip from the rooftops. The gray sky began to soften a little, the clouds shifting into a lighter shade. Dawn wasn't far now. The foreman knew he needed to act soon. Once the morning came, people would start arriving for work. And the creature could not be found sitting out here in the open. He stood up carefully, trying not to make any sudden noise. The creature didn't wake, but its ear twitched at the sound of his movement. He took a few quiet steps around the crate area, checking for a safe path where he could guide it later. The ground was wet but firm enough. If he moved slowly, the creature could follow him without slipping. When he returned to the creature's side, it was awake again. Its eyelids fluttered as it lifted its head. Even though it couldn't see him, its ears turned toward the sound of his footsteps instantly. "Good morning," he whispered. The creature made a soft, low hum in response. Its head moved slightly, as if trying to sense the world again. The foreman squatted down beside it, letting it hear his presence clearly. "I need to move you before sunrise," he said, speaking slowly and calmly. "People will start coming here soon. I don't want you to be scared." The creature listened, tilting its head at the sound. Its body was still sleepy, but it seemed to understand that something important was happening. The foreman took a deep breath and placed his hand against the creature's side. "Come on," he said gently. "You can trust me." The creature rose slowly, with effort. Its legs were stiff from resting on the cold ground, and it had to balance itself carefully. The foreman waited patiently, giving it time. When it finally stood, it leaned slightly toward him, using his presence as direction. "That's it," he encouraged. "We're going to a safer place." He took a step forward, making sure his footsteps remained steady and rhythmic so the creature could follow. The creature moved with quiet grace, despite its size. It stayed close behind him, listening to his every movement. Once again, it trusted him completely. They walked through the narrow path between the crates, moving carefully to avoid slipping on the wet ground. The foreman guided it slowly, speaking soft reassurance whenever the creature hesitated at an unfamiliar sound or sudden echo. The night's fog was lifting as they reached the back of the workshop. The old storage room stood there dusty, unused, but still strong enough to keep the creature safe. The foreman pulled the rusty door open. It made a loud metallic creak that echoed across the yard. The creature flinched at the noise, lowering its head. "It's okay," the foreman said immediately. "Just a door." He walked inside first so the creature could hear where he went. "There's enough space in here," he said. "Come slowly." The creature stepped forward, feeling the ground with each foot. The storage room was dark, but darkness didn't matter to a creature that couldn't see anyway. It entered the room carefully, sniffing the air. The space felt warmer than outside, sheltered from the wind and the last drops of rain. Once fully inside, the creature curled its tail around its feet and lowered its body with a soft thump. The foreman smiled to himself. It looked relieved, even comfortable. "You did well," he whispered. He sat down beside it again, leaning against the wall. The air inside the room was quiet and gentle, a peaceful contrast to the harsh night they had both endured. The creature nudged its head lightly toward him, almost like a thank you. He gently placed his hand on its head, feeling the slow rise and fall of its breath. For the first time since the night began, he felt like they had won a small victory. The creature was safe. It was sheltered. It wasn't standing alone on a dark, cold road anymore, Dot. And as the first faint light of dawn touched the sky outside, the foreman realized something important. This creature wasn't just something he found. It had become part of his responsibility now, and he wasn't going to walk away. Asterisk. The night had finally started to fade. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the ground was still wet, and the air carried that cold smell that always comes after a long storm. The foreman sat on an old wooden chair he had pulled from the workshop, rubbing his hands together to keep himself warm. He had been awake the whole night, making sure the blind alien dragon resting beside him stayed calm and safe. Even though his body felt heavy with tiredness, his mind refused to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he worried something might happen to the creature if he wasn't alert. The dragon lay quietly under the shed roof, breathing softly. The warm cloth the foreman had placed over its shoulders earlier was still there, slightly slipping off every now and then. The creature lifted its head whenever it heard a new sound, but each time it realized it was nothing threatening, it settled back down. The foreman watched it with the same care a person might give to an injured stray animal. He didn't know why he felt such responsibility, but he couldn't leave it out there alone. Not after seeing how lost and helpless it had been on the road. As the sky began to lighten, he finally heard the sound he had been waiting for. A vehicle approaching from the distance. At first, he wasn't sure if it was the rescue group he had called, but the slow, careful speed of the vehicle told him it probably was. He stood up, stretched his stiff back, and stepped out from under the shed to get a clearer look. His boots sank slightly into the soft mud, but he didn't mind. The important thing was that help had arrived. A white van rolled toward the workshop gate, its headlights dim as the sun slowly brightened the sky. It stopped right outside, and two people climbed out. Both wore thick jackets and carried small equipment bags. They approached the foreman with calm expressions, the kind that told him they had seen strange animals before and knew how to handle unpredictable situations. One of them greeted him politely and asked if he was the one who had made the late-night call. He nodded, still feeling a little unsure about how the entire situation must look from their perspective. He explained everything again, how he found the dragon on the road, how it seemed blind, how it followed sound, and how he brought it under the shed to protect it from the rain. He spoke in simple words, unsure if they would believe all of it, but he didn't leave anything out. They listened seriously and didn't laugh or question him. Instead, they asked where the creature was resting. He led them under the shed, moving slowly so the dragon wouldn't get startled. The creature lifted its head again, sensing unfamiliar footsteps and new voices. Its cloudy eyes moved in the direction of the sound, wings trembling lightly. Unsure of what was happening, the foreman knelt beside it and placed a gentle hand on its shoulder, speaking in the same calm voice he had used all night. The dragon relaxed as soon as it heard him. Even the rescue workers noticed how the creature reacted differently to him than to them. They exchanged a quick glance, quietly impressed. One of them crouched nearby and spoke softly, describing each motion before making it, just like a person might do with a frightened pet. They had special tools to check the dragon's breathing, heartbeat, and general condition, but they used them slowly and carefully. The creature didn't seem to like being touched by strangers, but because the foreman stayed next to it, it didn't panic. When they finished examining it, they stood up and told the foreman that the creature was weak, but not in critical danger. It needed warmth, rest, food, and a controlled environment where experts could understand what species it belonged to and how to help it properly. They said they had a safe transport area inside the van where temperatures could be controlled, and where the dragon would be protected from loud sounds and bright light. The foreman felt both relief and hesitation. Relief because the creature would finally be in proper care. Hesitation because, after spending the whole night protecting it, he felt strangely connected to it. He knew he had to let it go, but the thought still made his chest feel tight. The rescue workers prepared a large padded stretcher made with strong material that could hold a creature heavier than a human. They slowly guided the dragon onto it. At first, the creature resisted, unsure about the unfamiliar surface beneath its feet. It tried to pull back, its wings spread slightly in nervousness. But the foreman placed his hand gently against its side, saying a few comforting words. It relaxed again, trusting him. With careful teamwork, they lifted the stretcher and carried the dragon toward the van. The foreman walked beside them until they reached the open door of the transport space. The interior looked warm, lined with soft padding and lightly humming machinery that created a gentle, calming sound. The dragon sniffed the air, sensing a new environment. It hesitated again, but once more the foreman reassured it as they slid the stretcher inside. The creature lifted its head toward the foreman, almost as if searching for him. Its blind eyes looked empty, but the feeling behind the gesture was clear. The foreman stepped closer, letting the creature hear his breathing and feel his presence one last time. The dragon leaned forward slightly, its nose gently touching his chest in a soft, slow movement, a silent thank you. He didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat felt tight, and he wasn't sure what to say. But he placed a hand lightly on the creature's head, letting it know he understood. Once the dragon was safely secured, the rescue workers closed the doors and assured him that they would take it to their secure facility where a team would help it recover. They said they might contact him later if they needed to know more about how he found it. But for now, he had done everything he could. He watched the van slowly drive away. Its tires splashed water from the wet road as it turned the corner and disappeared behind the old buildings. The area became quiet again, except for the early morning birds beginning to chirp somewhere in the distance. For a long moment, the foreman just stood there, staring at the empty road. The world felt strangely still now that the dragon was gone. He felt tired, more tired than he had felt in months, but also calm, knowing the creature was in safe hands. He walked back to the shed, looked at the empty space where the dragon had rested all night, and let out a slow breath. The wooden chair was still there, along with the cloth he used to keep the creature warm. He picked up the cloth, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the workshop. He didn't know why he kept it, but something inside him said he should. After cleaning up, he went inside, washed his face, and finally let himself rest for a few minutes. Even though it had only been a single night, it felt like he had lived an entire lifetime of emotions. He knew that in the future, whenever he stepped outside on a rainy night, he would always remember this one. He didn't expect any reward. He didn't expect recognition. He didn't even expect to know what would eventually happen to the dragon. But he felt proud, not the loud, showy kind of pride, but the quiet one that grows inside someone when they do something kind simply because it's the right thing to do. And somewhere far away, as the van carried the dragon toward safety, the creature lay quietly, breathing easier, feeling warmth again after a long time. Maybe it didn't fully understand what had happened or where it was going, but it remembered the gentle voice of the human who stayed with it all night. For a creature that had spent so long wandering in darkness, that memory became a small light one that made the world feel a little less frightening, and that light was enough to give both of them a new beginning in their own separate ways.